You ask, what is our aim? I can answer in one word. It is victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory, however long and hard the road may be. For without victory, there is no survival. Let that be realised. No survival for the British Empire. No survival for all that the British Empire has stood for. No survival for the urge and impulse of ages. That mankind will move towards its goal. But I take up my task with buoyancy and hope. I feel that our cause will not be suffered to fail among men. At this time I feel entitled to claim the aid of all. And I say, come then, let us go forward together with our united strength. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen. You want to play the British Empire, the proud, stubborn champions of professional tea-making. In late war, you have one task: to liberate France and race across the Rhine as fast as possible to get to Berlin before the Soviets. Normandy, Market Garden, the Ruhr. But where to start? Welcome to another video from Overlord Games. In this video, we're going to be discussing the British starter boxes from Flames of War. We'll be looking at the savings compared to purchasing models separately and consider how good the box is for brand new players, as well as expanding an existing army for more experienced players. There are two books of British in late war, not including the Fortress Europe. The first book is the D-Day British, and the second is British Bulge. The British Armoured Battlegroup set for Fortress Europe is a good all-rounder set, but unfortunately it's no longer readily available. When discussing the boxes, I will first discuss the box as a whole, then discuss the units individually. The first box to discuss is the British D-Day starter box. This is the Desert Rats one. The box retails at £90, but it's easy to find retailers with a great discount. I will, however, only use recommended retail for the calculations in this video, as it honestly depends where you visit to find the actual percentage off, so I felt that would be easier to do. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop on the screen the approximate cost of the unit. Some of them are in halves, so where that is, I've divided the cost of the unit by the number of models in the box. I think that's a fair way of doing it. The savings are roughly £87 from this box if you were to buy it all separately. As a player of the Desert Rats, I've bought myself one of these boxes in the past and quite enjoyed it. The formation in the box is reasonable, with one HQ being a Cromwell, 2 units of 2 Cromwells and 1 Firefly in them, and then the 4 Stuarts. So that gives you 4 units for your main formation. However, the 2 main combat units, the 2 Cromwells and 1 Firefly combination, I think they need to be in 4s instead to get the best out of them. For not that many more points, you could get the 3 Cromwells and the unit will be just that little bit more stable. The box is, however, a good starting point if you intend to play the Desert Rats, but in my opinion, you do need at least one more box of Cromwells to bulk out the 2 armoured platoons, and bulk up the HQ maybe with some Cromwell CSs. Now, I know these can be quite controversial, but I like them for their ability to lay down smoke and to lay some extra templates, even if they are only in a unit of 2, which means that they suffer from having to re-roll successful hits. The other thing about the Cromwell CS is you can move it quite close and use its brutal weapon if you need to as well. So there's a little bit of flexibility, but I know in the community they are a little bit controversial, and this is of course my opinion, and I'm not a competitive player. The first unit I want to discuss is the Desert Rats Armoured Troop that's in the box. Now, I love the Desert Rats because of the Cromwells. However, what I don't love is typically that they're fielded in units that are combined with Fireflies, and it creates this situation where both tanks are kind of pulling against each other. Typically, you want your Firefly to remain hull down where it can utilise its rate of fire 2, anti-tank 14 gun to snipe off any enemy armour. If it starts moving though, it drops to rate of fire 1. On the other hand, the Cromwells with their movement 12 on a tactical, they kind of want to be aggressively flanking and not sitting back. If your Cromwells leave the Firefly, then the unit as a whole becomes weaker because they're no longer counted towards the morale. Also, this ends up feeling like a really odd compromise where neither unit is really happy with the role. You either end up having to move your Fireflies forward and having less rate of fire, or you leave the Firefly on its own and that makes your Cromwell formation weaker. So that's kind of the strange choice between them. The Stuart provides spearhead to your list and some reasonable flank shots for the D-Day era at anti-tank 7. Don't really try and take anything on from the front. It's not going to end well for you. Use that speed. However, they are overworked, meaning that if they move, then they're at a +1 score to hit their target. Their real power, though, is providing the spearhead rule, allowing you to expand your deployment zone whilst being part of your main formation. That, in my opinion, is the biggest benefit of the Stuart. Following on from that, the Universal Carriers are also in this box, and you get 3 of them. They're small, so they're great for hiding as well as the Stuarts, and they provide the spearhead rule. So 2 units with the same sort of role to get you spearhead and to be able to find out what's ahead of you and to harass enemy units. The paratroopers are unfortunately my least favourite inclusion in this box. I just feel they're overpriced and they'll rarely be able to excel in the way you'd hope in your games. They're a great unit in the assault, having a good motivation and also having that British 3+ to assault. But getting them there unscathed can be a real uphill battle. And on the defence, I'm being honest, I'd probably take a normal rifle platoon, as they'll do the same job of providing defensive fire, but for less points. I don't know. I just feel that the paratroopers just are not a great unit. And as part of this box as well, I could be wrong here, but I don't believe the Desert Rats really fought alongside the paratroopers. But I can see where they were going with this, as the previous box already had the hard plastic motor infantry platoon in it. So maybe they were just trying to provide some kind of diversity. But overall, paratroopers for me are a big no. I even gave mine away. Sorry. Do you like heavy tanks? Well, Churchills are in this box. Now, the first thing to note is that these can either be a Churchill unit, a Crocodiles unit, or Averies. So bear that in mind, because I know some people don't necessarily notice that what's on the back of the box, it includes all the options. Now, Crocodiles are expensive, that's the first thing I'm going to say about them. But they can pull their weight with their flamethrowers. Their front armour 11 makes them a pain for any Stugs or Panzer IVs they encounter, because, you know, the anti-tank rating of a Panzer being 11. That being said, unless your opponent's playing lots of infantry, it can really feel kind of like sometimes a wasted unit. Because if there's no infantry for your flamethrowers to get rid of, then you've just paid a lot of points for some 6-pounder anti-tank guns. But having them all with front armour 11 is also a benefit. On the other hand, taking a regular Churchill unit as support is also an option. With a front armour of 9, although 1 can be upgraded to 11, they're perfect for helping to assault an objective. And sometimes it can be good as quite a surprise to your opponent, as typically against the British they kind of used to facing front armour 6 instead of 9. The Avery provides a nice anti-tank rating, and according to lessons in the front, they've fixed the fact that it couldn't shoot at one point because of the danger close rule, but that is all sorted, so don't worry, the unit does work. I personally don't rate the Avery that much on its own, but it is still a cool little unit, and it would, if you built it, leave you with 1 Churchill, I'm afraid, so... But that is your choice at the end of the day. If you want the British 25-pounder is one of those units you think of when you think about the British Army in World War II. The box is good in this regard because it comes with 4 of them, and they don't suffer from having to re-roll hits due to being a lesser unit than 4. Artillery, big fan of it, great for clearing out infantry. The 25-pounder is a bit of a weird one because it's firepower 4+. You also have access to priests in this list that have a firepower of 3+, which are slightly stronger, but they're not included in the box. I do, however, just love the little turntables they come on. I just think they're so cool. And to be honest, for the points, this is not a bad artillery unit. The question is whether you want to take this or a unit of 4 priests in your lists, really. The M10 Tank Destroyer, or the M10 17-pounder, as I'm hoping you're going to build it in the British list. Another chance to get some anti-tank 14 into your list on a decent chassis with front armour 6. The problem with them in this box is that they only come in 2s, so they're extremely fragile. You only need to lose 1, and then you'll lose both sometimes to last stand checks. However, if you can get another 2, maybe by combining this for another box or purchasing 2 more from other sources, M10s are a really strong tank. And in British, especially in the Normandy book, there's kind of this lacking really of the 17-pounder in your normal platoons. Unlike the Germans where they can get the Panther in their black boxes formations, you can't. You can only get it as the Firefly. So having a unit of M10s gives you that much needed anti-tank for taking out units like Panthers and Tigers reliably. As a Desert Rats player, I enjoy the influx of Cromwells this box brings. I do think it's a good box in terms of getting started with the Desert Rats, but I do feel the box is hurt slightly by the inclusion of the Paratroopers. That being said, if your aim is to play with Cromwells, I'd suggest to pick it up, or if your plan is to expand your British to have some Cromwells, absolutely like this box. However, as a new player getting started box, I'm not sure it's necessarily the best box, but that being said, it does include the 4 25-pounders, some universal carriers, and some Stuarts. All of those will fit into most British lists if you want them. That being said, the M10s do need another 2 models in their unit to make them kind of where you want them to be, to get rid of those Tigers. The second box to discuss is the British Bulge Starter Force. The box was released to work with the British Bulge book and is based around a Comet Armoured Squadron formation. The story of Britain in late war is a story of finding as many weapons platforms as possible, which can field the 17-pounder anti-tank gun. It is also sometimes missed that the 17-pounder is anti-tank 15 in bulge instead of anti-tank 14 like in the D-Day book. This can be easily missed at first glance. The box is £90 RRP, although once again, as we've discussed with the Desert Rats box, it's quite easy to find a retailer that's putting them lower than that with a percentage discount. To buy the sets individually, it would be approximately £171. Once again, that's not a discounted price, and also I've had to round some of the tanks and units up because they're not full sets. The set therefore gives a great discount and is good for both upgrading your collection or starting a new army. I personally purchased 2 of these sets for my British, as the set actually doubles up nicely. With two, it rounds out all of your units nicely to 4s and gives you flexibility with your formations. It's important to add though that as a Desert Rats player already, I was adding the challengers to my Cromwells, so I did have a use for them. This box, as we're going to discuss though, if you're not a Desert Rats player, might be a bit harder to use. The box ultimately does suffer a little from presenting the player with a weak main formation. This is a HQ of 1 Comet and 2 Cromwells, which are the CS version, a unit of 3 Comets, and a unit of 3 Chaffies as your black box options, meaning the formation, as taken out of the box, is extremely brittle. The support options are also a little brittle, with the 2 Valentines being another 2 17-pounders, which are easy to break, because if you lose one, your morale is affected. But also, it's adding more 17-pounders in a box that is already filled with them. There's also the problem of 2 Sextons. That's another brittle unit, which ends up re-rolling hits and will fall over to a swift breeze with their front armour 1. The challenges in this box are also a support box. The box includes 4 Comets, which are a welcome addition to the British arsenal in late war, a dangerous adversary to any German player. With a front armour of 7, a tactical move of 12 inches, an anti-tank 14 gun, which has high explosive and smoke rounds. It cannot be understated how powerful the 77mm gun is by having 14 anti-tank with high explosive and with smoke. The Comet can crack open a Panther from the front and has the mobility to make up for its armour 7, which still isn't a bad value by any means. At 7 points a model, these are by far my favourite British unit in the Bulge book. The Challenger can be chosen in one of 2 roles. It can be part of a Cromwell squadron, or it can be fielded in its own Challenger troop. The Challenger has a movement of 12 and an anti-tank value of 15 using its 17-pounder gun. When being used in a Cromwell squadron without access to Comets, I actually quite like the Challenger. However, I do believe that when used with the Comet, the Challenger is unfortunately outclassed and ultimately just feels like a weaker Comet. which is unfortunate. The Chaffee, I hope I've pronounced that right, packs the punch of a medium tank with the Sherman 75mm gun, anti-tank 10, onto a light tank chassis. This also gives them a low points cost and a tactical move of 12 inches. They also have the spearhead rule, which allows you to extend your deployment zone. I think for their points they're a pretty good unit. When discussing the Sexton and Kangaroo, it's important to say that the kit includes 5 of the kits that include Ram, Kangaroo and Sexton. The Sexton provides much needed artillery support using the British 25 pounder, which is great for digging out dug-in infantry and pinning those gun teams which are after your tanks. They do, however, fall over to a swift breeze. Front armour 1, not great. And if you only build 2 Sextons, as the list suggests, then that's going to be quite a painful time rerolling those successful hits. The Kangaroo, on the other hand, provides that motor platoon with that mechanised infantry. Get your lads to the enemy objective. So they can be quite a useful unit. The Archer is an anti-tank 15 17 pounder gun on the Valentine chassis. It's one of those quirky, weird British tanks. The gun faces the rear of the vehicle, and it's all part of this trying to get the 17 pounder in as many places as possible. Having 2 in the set though makes it a weaker unit. It's hurt by morale because you only need to lose 1 to have to take last stand checks. However, at 4.5 points it is quite cheap for a vehicle to sit at the back and shoot at long range. When you compare the Challenger and the Archer in that regard, neither of them have an armour save against Panthers. So to be honest, that's where the Archer kind of has a bit more merits. Overall, I feel the box is useful if you're trying to have lots of options and possibly willing to buy 2 for options but not use them all at once. The box is essentially a combination of models released with the British Bulge Book and does that well, giving Comets, Challengers, Chaffies, Kangaroos, Sextons, Archers. I do feel there is merit to buying 2 of them to solve some of the issues, but then you're buying 2 of them, so that's up to you. But it does give you plenty of options to try out, and maybe you'll like playing with your Comets and want to add another platoon of Comets. Maybe you enjoy your Challengers, so add another platoon of Challengers. So it just gives you that option to try. We hope this video has been helpful to up and coming British players. If you have any thoughts, then please feel free to leave a comment below for us. Then we can have a little discussion, hopefully, and exchange opinions. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel if you enjoy our content. It really does help to grow the channel, and we have big plans for this year. If you're looking to purchase any Flames of War models, then please consider our web store at overlordgames.co.uk. Thank you for watching everyone, and goodbye for now.